are with this darn tractor again. I plugged in the alternator wire right down there, and the battery went dead again. So I don't think we have a ground problem. I think we might have a problem with the alternator. I've already taken off the engine cover here, and it's real easy. There's just 2 bolts in front and 2 bolts in back, and you also have to take out the bolts right there on the starter motor cover, each one, and then this cover just lifts right off. So I'm gonna have to get this flywheel off. Briggs & Stratton makes a special tool to do that. That's the only way to get it off. I do happen to have that tool, so I've already sprayed some penetrating lube on all these bolts. I'm going to let them sit a little while. I'm going to go ahead and take these off, and then I will show you all how to take off the alternator. Or excuse me, I'll show you how to take off the flywheel. These screws are Phillips head, and they're in there, they're rusted in place, and all I'm doing is stripping them out with a regular screwdriver here. It's a good thing I have my special impact driver. I'm going to go ahead and pound on these. I'll show you how this tool works. Alright, so let me show you how this is done. Just want to make sure that the wrench is set to the left position, or the reverse left. I don't know if you can see that on there. It says it right there. Anyways, put it in place. Here's one of the stripped out bolts or screws, and you get that in there as tight as you can, and you push down on it as much as you can, and then you really whack it good. And I'm going to use this, one of my favorite hammers, to do that. Okay. Well, I don't know if that's going to work. Looks like it's just going to bust through. Now let's see if I can get this one out. Looks like I might just have to get medieval on this thing and rip it out, or grind off these heads. Always something piece of crap. So we managed to save this, so that's good. You can see why my impact driver didn't work. It's just too thin of a material to support my hammering. But I think these screws poke through a lot on the other side, so I can probably get them out that way, and I'll bend this piece back into place. Okay, so I think now we're ready for the to get this bolt out, and I'll show you a good technique that I use to do that. So I tried all these American sockets. None of them would fit, but the 24mm seems to fit. Sometimes Briggs & Stratton does that to you. Now if you have an impact wrench, you can just put it on there and buzz it right off. I'm going to show you how I used to do it back in the old days before I had an impact tool. So left loose to turn it off, or to get it off, and you just want to make sure you have that nice and secure. And show you what I do here is basically I just give it a good rap with a hammer. Sometimes a rubber mallet works best for this, but I think this hammer I have here is going to work just fine. So my idea is just give it a real sharp blow. Yeah, I'll try to get a little more coordinated here. Now don't ruin anything by smashing it to hell. Like that. Oh man, I got it. Alright, well, banged a couple of things up like an idiot, but I think I got it loose. Hopefully I didn't ruin anything. So anyways, that's how you can get off bolts that are really stuck and hard to get off, is just by that technique right there. As long as you don't damage any other part of the lawnmower by swinging a hammer around like a crazy man or woman. Okay, so now the only way to get this sucker off is with this tool, part number 19203. It's a flywheel puller from Briggs and Stratton, and this is what it looks like. And let's see if I can remember how to do this here. Let me think about this. So you put the nut back on part way, and you thread this into place. You thread these little boogers into place. That looks like they do fit. I want to tighten these in a bit. And then you can thread down these nuts all the way. I think hand tight's probably good enough. And then that falls right down on there. And how am I going to do this? I think these get threaded down. So you basically put this thing on and you thread these bolts in, and then you just tighten down these bolts or these nuts, and it should lift that flywheel right off of there. I'm gonna have to get something to hold the flywheel. I might have to get a cheater bar on that sucker, on this wrench, because these are getting to be too tight. And spray a little more penetrating lube down in there. So here's what I use for a cheater bar. I'll just put this on the end of the wrench, and it'll help me get a little more torque down in here. Okay. Probably not the best way to lock this flywheel, what I'm doing here, but I think it'll work. Don't always have to do it the best way for it to work. Okay, now we get a good grip on this sucker. Oh yeah. Oh, something broke loose. Hopefully it wasn't the tool. Go ahead and crank down on this side a little bit. Something broke loose. That sucker was on there. Yeah, I think it's off now. Cool, man. So, well, actually, now I think you can just take the whole thing off. Oh, except for that nut's on there, so I do have to take that off. Let me see here. How am I going to do this? There we go. Cool, man. So that's how you use one of these pullers. They're pretty handy if you know how to use them. There it is. Don't lose the key. That's what that big sucker looks like. So, what we have here is interesting. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on here. Take a close look at that alternator. I thought this engine was going to have points, but it doesn't, which is good. So if you look closely at the coils there on that alternator, can't quite tell if any of them are fried. Some of them do look a little smoked, like that one there, and like that one looks a little smoked too. So I'm going to take a closer look. So after a little investigation on this, I determined that it was missing the diode, of all things. Now, I wasn't real familiar with what a diode is or why it needed one, but it did. So after a lot of research, what I determined was that the wire that comes off the stator that I showed you earlier, it's supposed to have a diode on it, and what a diode does is allow electricity to only pass one way. In this case, we want electricity to pass out of the alternator and into our battery. But without the diode there, we have electricity going both ways, and I think that that's what was causing our problem. So I went ahead and ordered a new one of these alternators that comes with the diode already on the wire. There's a lot of different ways that you have to use to determine which type of alternator you have. Mine, having a red wire coming off of it, determined that this was an alternator that produces about 3 amps. I think the diode might help drop that amperage down a little bit too. Let's see, where else is this thing attached to? Might just be rusted in place. Yeah, I think it's just rusted in place. Try to pry it off there. I don't care if I break it. There we go. It just wiggles right off. There we go. And that wire end has the wrong connector on it, so I'm just going to yank it out. But you can see we've got the half alternator here with the red wire coming off it, and it is in fact missing the diode on the end of the wire, so that's why I ordered a new one. To be continued.